وتدعوه إلى الدين وإلى الهداية الربانية تثاب على هذا وهذا أعظم أحمد.
So the question here is, there is a growing trend of Muslims celebrating Christmas by buying halal turkeys and Christmas trees. Is this permissible? Habib Kadhim says there's nothing wrong with that necessarily by the law. If somebody wants to buy a tree, let them buy a tree. If you want to have turkey, then let them have turkey. But what we should warn them of is that do not have the intention to imitate the Jews and the Christians. If you're doing that because the Jews and the Christians do it, then that's where the problem lies, your desire to imitate them. He says, but if you want to be a Muslim who celebrates prophets, then we have our own way of celebrating the life and times of prophets. Lay that and adhere to it.
I read somewhere, but there's no commentary that the Dajjal already came to earth before in the Prophet ﷺ, and they commented on that. Could you ask the Shaykh to clarify and give some commentary on that, please?
وورد في الحديث عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه رأى سيدنا تميم الداري في جزيرة في البحر هكذا رواه الإمام مسلم في صحيحه.
So the question relates to whether the Dajjal has already manifested. I've read this somewhere, to which Imam Muslim radiallahu ta'ala an relates the hadith on the authority of Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari radiallahu ta'ala an, that he saw the Antichrist, the Dajjal.
وإنما يظهر ظهورا كاملا آخر الزمان كما روى الإمام مسلم رحمه الله.
But his true manifestation, his full manifestation, is at the end of time, as Imam Muslim also relates.
يخرج الدجال من غضبة يغضبها بعد فتح القسطنطينية.
That the Antichrist will manifest due to intense rage, because he's been enraged after Constantinople or Istanbul has been conquered.
حتى ظهر رجل في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقال له ابن صياد كما ورد في الحديث وكان بعض الصحابة يظن أنه هو المسيح الدجال.
He said to the point that we see in the sound tradition of an individual Ibn Sayyad that he was a person who some of the companions believed was the Antichrist.
وكان مرة من المرات أغضبه سيدنا عبد الله بن عمر.
And once we see that Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab enraged him, made him angry.
فكانت سيدة حفصة من الصحابة الذين يظنون أنه المسيح الدجال.
حفصة.
أيوة حفصة.
And Hafsa, our mother Hafsa, the daughter of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anha, that she was of those who likewise believed he was the Antichrist.
فقال سيدنا عبد الله بن عمر لا تغضب هذا الرجل لأني سمعت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن الدجال يخرج من غضبة يغضبها. She said to her brother Abdullah ibn Umar that do not make him angry, because I hear the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say that the Antichrist will manifest due to intense rage after he has been enraged. ولكن الصواب أن هذا الرجل ليس هو المسيح الدجال فإن المسيح الدجال ينزل في آخر الزمان.
But obviously what is correct is that Ibn Sayyad was not the Antichrist, but the Antichrist manifests at the end of time.
Yeah, I got told that it was someone called Judas who was someone that betrayed Jesus. That was his appearance changed to Jesus, and then he got the punishment crucified, and then he's getting punishment for it. But you said it's one of his disciples.
هذه رواية ضعيفة. هذه رواية ضعيفة ولقالها المفسرون بصيغة التمريض. الرواية التي ذكرناها هي الصحيحة التي وردت عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كما رواها الإمام النسائي وابن جرير بسنده إلى ابن عباس. بل قال ابن كثير أن السند إلى ابن عباس صحيح.
So it's a narration we made mention of. It's a narration that was mentioned. It's mentioned in Nasa'i, and it's also mentioned by Imam al-Tabari radiallahu ta'ala an, and many of the Mufassirun. Ibn Kathir says that the transmission is sound from the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas. As for the transmission, not that it was Judas Iscariot, but that it was one of the disciples of Jesus who was treacherous to Jesus. Okay, it doesn't mention in name in the books. That is considered a weak tradition. And when it's mentioned in that form that it's weak.
وهذه رواية مشهورة أن أحد من الحواريين خان سيدنا عيسى ودل اليهود عليه أو دل هؤلاء القتلة عليه، ولكنها رواية ضعيفة وبعيدة، لأن الحواري لا يخون نبيه. وتؤيدها الرواية الأخرى أنه بطلب وبرغبة منه هو الذي وافق على أن سيدنا عيسى أن يلقي الله شبه سيدنا عيسى عليه. هذا يليق بمقام أنصار الأنبياء وأتباع الأنبياء.
Although what you're saying is well known and you hear it often mentioned and it's there in the books, but it's considered weak. And even when we look into not necessarily the transmission, which is weak, we look into the meaning likewise, that is definitely weak, because how could we have a disciple that is raised and reared by a prophet be treacherous? It doesn't sound right, something doesn't sound right there, okay? But what in terms of transmission, it's weak anyway, and the sound transmission said that it was one of the disciples who wanted to give his life for Jesus. The opposite of treachery here, martyrdom.
So, are there any Ba'alwi sheikhs based in the UK?
هؤلاء يعني من ينتسب إلى البعلوي من المشايخ هنا مربين هنا في بريطانيا.
إن شاء الله تعالى.
I think you understood that one. Any further questions, inshallah?
How will, when you do your prayers, the Dajjal, how will he be defeated? The armies and stuff like that?
Well, يسأل الحروب الدجال وكيف يضرب الدجال.
هذه طويلة جدا وتأخذ جلسة طويلة كاملة.
He said that's there's a long answer for that one. That needs its own lecture.
ولكن يكفي مثلا أن الذي يخرج قبل الدجال الذي يسمى المهدي وردت الأحاديث أنه يخوض 5 حروب كبرى. فإذا كان هذا في المهدي فكيف بعد ذلك حروب المسلمين مع الدجال؟ فلذلك قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كما روى الإمام مسلم رحمه الله تعالى في صحيحه: تغزون جزيرة العرب فتفتحونها، ثم تغزون فارس فتفتحونها، ثم تغزون الروم فتفتحونها. 3 هذه في نص الحديث، بعدين من مجموع الروايات الأخرى عددها.
So he said that as for the wars of the Antichrist, how is eventually defeated, that there are going to be 5 great wars when we look at all of the traditions. All the traditions, will speak about 3 great wars. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which says that you will declare war against the Arabs, the Arabian Peninsula, and you will conquer it. And then you will declare war against the Persians, and you will conquer it. Then you will declare war against Europe or Rome, and you will conquer it. Okay, this refers to 3. When we look at all the hadith, we're going to see 3 or 5 different wars which involve the Antichrist.
ولكن يكفي أن تعرف أن الدجال يشن هجومين كبيرين وكلاهما يفشلان، وهذان أخطر هجومين يشنهما الدجال على المسلمين. أحدهما إلى المدينة، وقد ذكر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم هذا في صحيح مسلم، وأنه يقف أمام جبل أحد ولا يتمكن أن يدخل المدينة، فيأتي بالجيوش الجرارة من كل مكان ويريد أن يقتحم المدينة، فيقف أمامها وينزل في مكان اسمه سبخات المدينة، أي الأماكن التراب غير صالحة للزراعة حوالي المدينة. فطرف الجيش يقف أمام أحد ولا يتقدم، والطرف الثاني من الجيش يقف أمام سبخات المدينة، والسبخات مكان معروف عند أهل المدينة وعند المحدثين، فيفشل هجوم هذا.
So we see one of the wars, he said what's important about the wars of the Antichrist is 2 the wars in which he is ultimately defeated. The first is the war which he brings his armies to the gates of Medina, and he's going to try to enter into Medina to conquer Medina, Munawwara, but he's unable to conquer Medina to Munawwara. And the hadith says that the armies are between Mount Uhud and like the swamplands of Medina, on the outskirts of Medina, and they try to enter into Medina, but they're repelled. Okay, and the swamps of Medina, the swamps of Medina, they're well known to the people of Medina, exactly where we're speaking about.
فيطالبه قواده الذين معهم أن يدخل المدينة ويهاجم المدينة، فلا يقدر، وبعضهم لا يدرون، لأنه عندما يظهر المسيح الدجال نحن نسميه المسيح الدجال، أما الآخرون فليس عندهم كذلك، فيقولون نحن وصلنا إلى هذا المكان، لماذا لا ندخل المدينة بعد كل هذه المسافة؟ فهو يعرف كما قال النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم: إن على أنقاض المدينة ملائكة صافين حاملين سيوفهم، لو تقدم خطوة واحدة لقتلوه، فإذا لا يتمكن يدخل المدينة بسبب وجود الملائكة.
So then they're going to try to enter into Medina, but they're going to be repelled, and his army, his generals are going to question, why don't we enter into Medina? They don't know why. And he says, but he's the